Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into what it really means to be a software developer. We're going to follow the entire path, right from that first moment of curiosity, all the way to building a lasting legacy. And we're going to do it by pulling from over a decade of one programmer's own personal writings.
This is where it all begins, isn't it? It's that feeling when you stumble onto something and it just gets its hooks in you. It's an idea that gets lodged in your brain and it just will not leave you alone. And that's really the heart of our story today, that initial spark of a lifelong obsession.
So, let's talk about that spark. For every developer, there's that one moment where it all begins, that moment of discovery. Now, this story, it didn't start in some high-tech lab or a fancy university. Nope, it started with a forgotten, unused computer in the back of a high school classroom. Our author taught himself the basic programming language, basically figuring out how to turn all these abstract ideas from his other classes into something real, something he could actually build and run. It was just him, a programming manual, and a machine. And this is where that initial spark really catches fire and turns into something more. See, it stops being just a hobby or a job you do from 9 to 5. Programming becomes the way you see the world. Your brain is just always on, always designing, always problem solving, long after you've shut the laptop for the day. Okay, so that initial passion, that'll get you started, but it's not going to get you through a whole career. For that, you need craft. So this next stage is all about moving from that raw idea to the disciplined, skilled work of actually building things. So if you're going to build your craft, where do you even begin? What's the one single essential language that every developer out there absolutely has to know? Just think about it for a second. What would you pick? Well, the answer we're given here might actually surprise you. It's not Python, it's not C#, and nope, it's not even JavaScript, the languages that pretty much run the world today. So what in the world could it be?
And there you have it, SQL, Structured Query Language. What I find so interesting here is the reasoning. The argument is that since almost every single application you can think of has to do with data, then learning how to speak to a database is the single most fundamental skill you can have. It's literally the language of data itself.
But, knowing a language is only one piece of the puzzle. The real engine under the hood, the core of the craft, is the algorithm. It's not just about code. It's the blueprints, the step-by-step logic you figure out before you ever write a single line. Let's make this super concrete. Say we're converting Fahrenheit to Celsius. The process is everything. First, you get the temperature. But, and this is so important, step 2 is you check if it's a valid number. You can't do math on letters, right? Only then do you apply the formula. Then you show the result. And finally, you loop back around to see if the user wants to go again. That is algorithmic thinking. It's clear, it's repeatable, and it's built to handle errors. And that's really the big takeaway for this part. Languages are going to change, frameworks will come and go, but the ability to think through a problem algorithmically, that skill is timeless. That's the real craft of being a programmer. Okay, so you've got the spark. You've started to hone your craft. But what happens years down the line when the initial excitement wears off and the reality of a long career starts to set in? Well, that brings us to Act 3, the grind.
All right, I'm not going to sugarcoat this next part. Our author really doesn't mince words. He takes on one of the most common piece of advice you'll ever hear about success, with a very blunt take.
So why say something so bold? Well, because motivation is just a feeling, and feelings, they come and go. The argument here is that real, lasting progress doesn't come from sitting around waiting for inspiration to strike. It comes from discipline. It comes from showing up and doing the work even when you don't feel like it. Because sooner or later, the consequences of not doing the work become very, very real. And the grind is absolutely mental. It's not just about putting in the hours. It's about the fact that the problems don't just clock out when you do. They stick with you. They follow you home. You're thinking about them in the shower, when you're trying to sleep. It's an intense and sometimes all-consuming process. So, after years of the spark, the craft, and the grind, what does it all really add up to? What are you actually leaving behind? That brings us to our final act,
the legacy.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? A career isn't just a list of jobs you had or the paychecks you earned. It's the body of work you create. It's the knowledge you pass on. It's the impact you have on others. It really is the sum of your contributions.
And, a legacy can take a lot of different forms. It could be teaching other people, maybe through courses or just mentoring someone starting out. It can be writing, sharing what you know in blog posts, or even books. Of course, it's building useful things, whether that's a huge application or just a fun little game. And it's also about creating community, like the author did when he started a local IT professionals group.
But underneath all of those things, the true foundation of any lasting legacy is personal accountability. It's that willingness to stand behind your work, to own every single line of code, every design choice. That's where real craftsmanship meets character.
And so we end with this question. We've traced the entire journey, from a spark in a high school classroom to a long career built on craft, discipline, and a deep sense of ownership. The code is your responsibility. So the only question left to ask is, what will you build with it?